Hey everybody, Alex here, and I figured I might as well do a small tutorial of OBS because some recent changes have been made, which makes um, streaming and high quality streaming really nice and easy. Um, one of the few updates, one of the few key things that's been added recently is audio monitoring support. Now, obviously, when you do OBS and you want to stream, and an important thing to do is uh, split out your audio sources. So, for example, I have um, a dedicated mic for me, and I have effects on one and no effects on one because I wanted to keep the raw audio, but that's just me. So dedicated mic for me, dedicated mic for somebody doing a call, uh, and then in-game audio with the default device, that kind of thing. Really nice and simple stuff. Um, the the important thing, obviously, with that is that you can adjust how the stream sounds without changing how stuff sounds to you. So, for example, the audio balance between me and my friend, um, you don't hear yourself, or even if you do monitor yourself, it'd be difficult to figure out where the balance is. And so uh, the nice thing is just to separate the channels out and be able to control, for example, um, one input source at a time. Uh, Obviously, I'm using a program called Voicemeeter, which uses a virtual device. So it'll instantiate a few fake audio devices to input to, and then it has its own little mixer. But the nice thing with Voicemeeter, at least for me, is that the software has ASIO support. I have a hardware DAC for my mic, so I actually have a lot of like input and output channels that I can't usually access. But Voicemeeter lets me output to those without without kind of interfering with what else is going on. So um, I used this in part to record my friend and at the same time to also monitor on my default device. Actually, um, this Sapphire audio device is the only device I'm actually using. It's the default device for Windows, and it's also the um, secondary device that I'm using. And I do that by, or I get away with that because Windows uh, WASP drivers is a separate thing from ASIO. ASIO is uh, audio streaming input output API from Steinberg, and so that does its own little thing, and so it's not treated in the same way as a regular device, which means, for example, if I feed back um, audio with the ASIO driver, I actually don't get it recorded here with the default device because the default device and all of these are actually using the Windows audio drivers. I've been trying to chat with people to get ASIO support done in in OBS, but we'll see. Anyway, so have a few different devices, a few different channels. You get Let me get myself out of the way. Yeah. I was showing stuff off with my overlay there. Let me just walk myself back through. So here are a few of my devices without being blocked off. And then, right. So the other important thing is new filter support. They've now added audio filters support for VSTs. So now you can add in VST plugins, the kinds of things that are used for like professional audio stuff, like actual audio production, music production, and just chain them together like you would anywhere else, and then you'd be good to go. You don't necessarily have to do that though, because OBS actually provides a few of the basic things you want. But there are a number of things, for example, that do stuff a little bit better. So I might, for example, now I'm not really actually going to add a filter to anything serious that you can hear, because there's otherwise I'm going to mess things up. But for example, I might do a first a gate, a basic gate, and then I would you obviously, while you're using this kind of program, you'll get the added benefit of having a feedback while there's actually audio here, and you'll actually be able to hear the effect if you're listening to the monitoring. So unfortunately, I'm just like guesstimating because I remember my settings. So I had a relatively low floor for silence, which was nice, and then I would do something like pretty fast attack and then a pretty lengthy release. And then I might, this obviously all depends on you, but I might throw on the gain reduction for the gate pretty high. You can usually, if you figure out where your noise floor is, where the silence should be relative to other things like breathing or something else, then you can adjust this kind of thing and figure out what kinds of sounds kind of go above that and what amount of dB that those might be. So basically just play around with that for a bit. Or of course you could just whole hog and silence the thing. But anyway, so I do something like a gate followed by, oops, gate, oops. Obviously can't name things the same thing. A gate followed by a compressor or an EQ. I can't really remember the order that I usually do these. So you might, for example, throw out some of the low end bit, or I'm not really familiar with how this works. Wait, low shelf, high shelf. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I might throw out like 80 dB. A bit. Might boost the mid, the highs, maybe. Who knows? you can find some nice tutorials on what you should really do, or figure out what really suits you. And then of course do a compressor, and then that's not the one I usually use. This one, is this the one I just, okay, there we go. Yeah, this is the one. I like this GUI a bit better. So yeah, you could play around with this kind of thing and figure out what ratio suits you. So just to follow things, if you're not familiar with what's going on. So the gate cuts out the things that should be silent. So it'll take you'll look for your noise floor with your device, and you'll set the threshold just beyond that, so that any sounds that are a bit louder than silence will actually trigger your mic, or trigger your mic. Will trigger the gate, and then at that point, then it's no longer silent. That's what a gate does. It's either on or off, and you set the threshold, and then the obviously the amount that you silence things is a bit variable. You don't have to, for example, have it on and off, but like on and off where like you can't hear anything. You could if you wanted, or you can kind of play it smart or a little bit tricky and just lower it a bit, so that the relative change when the gate's on and off isn't really noticeable if it does activate. And then the EQ is to get your voice kind of in the right range, maybe a more realistic range. Your mic might have a slight adjustment for some of the stuff. It might have a not so flat response range, so you might want to adjust it a bit to get it to sound more like you, or not. Who knows? And then the compressor is a way to kind of compensate for what the gate's done. It will take. It's a similar idea to the gate. There will be a threshold, and stuff beyond that threshold will not be modified by that gate. Things way above the threshold will be brought down, and then there's a relative slope of stuff in a certain range which will be boosted. So for example, because you cut out the floor really badly, you would do something like not a 2-to-1 ratio, maybe something lower, maybe something higher, but you would do something like a 2-to-1 ratio to kind of recover the loudness that you've lost because you've cut off the low end. It's usually the way of explaining it is it kind of covers for distance. Like a compressor makes it kind of nice if you move back and forth from your mic. And if you get close, it'll bring the audio kind of to a limit cap. But if you like move back a bit, it'll make the input relatively louder than it should be. And so that's how it kind of makes things nice and even. And that's why it's nice to use to recover from a gate. So yeah, so you'll have those kinds of things make your voice sound all nice. Oh, and then another nice thing to use. I'll just open my thing. Why did I bother to open a separate track? See, I can bring up this window and just show you it working. Why didn't I not do this? So here's this activating at a certain point here, and you'll see this is how much the gate is reducing the sound. So it's when it's off to the right, it's lowering it by quite a lot. When it's off to the left, it's on, so you can hear me. Then obviously over here is the input. And then we have our here we have our compressor. So I'm actually kind of quite high to bring back the volume. And then I actually increased the output by a few dB at the end just because. And then I did my EQ. So I cut off the 80 by a few dB. I cut off the mid by a few dB, and then low mid. This is why I wanted this one. Raised the high mid by a bit, raised the high by a bit, kind of, and then didn't mess with the dB afterwards. So the reason why I increased the output dB from the compressor is so that I could see the actual reading kind of at the end of the output. So this is what this should be, like, relatively for like the recording. So this should be hovering around -24, which is pretty, it's pretty quiet actually. And then the last thing is a de-esser. Now, I didn't really mess with this too much. You kind of have to play with this for your own voice, but this takes out a bit out of S's, because those tend to be a slight problem. And that's how I would get a very nice, clean sound out of my mic. And then you can see the visual difference between this is my raw. So you see that's hovering right about there. That's it dropping down to the bottom right there is because of the gate. And then the compressor brings it all the way up here. The EQ obviously makes a slight difference, but not too much in terms of total volume. But so yeah, so that's the reason why you would do those things. So instead of having this weird, like, really awkward range right here where I might try to play around with like just the volume here, like by adding a gain maybe. Like if worst came to worst and I didn't really want to bother doing anything, I would just boost this like this. So I'd add a and you can see how that brings that up. But yeah. So this, you can still see it's a little bit nicer with like the compressor and everything else, because the if you bring up the gain, you'll increase your noise floor. You'll be able to hear a lot of white noise, and then it's a larger range. I'll be peaking out over here on this end, and that could be pretty bad. Also, I had to boost my mic by quite a bit, like 15 dB. So 15 dB kind of got me roughly 15, yeah. So, But you can see, so it basically helps kind of zoom in on a portion of the audio that you really want to get. Let me get rid of this because I don't want to keep that. So that is why streaming with OBS is super nice. In addition to all the other features, if you've seen any other videos, you'll probably pick up on why those are nice. But this latest update 18, very, very, very nice. It also includes an automatic installer now. So if any future updates come along, you no longer have to do a weird little like download page thing. You can just straight from OBS, which is really nice. And yeah, that's it.